Welcome to Wickerson Studios. I am recording this day, so we're in a few seconds into this. Let me just see if it's working. Um, Looks okay. Hopefully you can hear me. Maybe I'll turn my mic up a bit because the kids are home. And testing. Perfect. As you can see, I'm playing with some simple lattice structures with Python. And I want to show how simple it is to get your head around working computationally in Rhino. And if you do have the help of anything like ChatGPT or Bard, or preferably AI Copilot in GitHub, that would probably be the best. I'm going to just take off a few other things on my other screen so I don't confuse things. And what I did was I simply opened a Grasshopper script up, and I'm copying code from books, just going through and making some fun games, just small Python projects. I did a maze earlier. I did the Bagels project. I did a bitmap. And I also did a number guessing game, which I'm not even bringing into Grasshopper, but it was all here in this script. And I've commented it all off beforehand. Because I didn't want to run those other scripts, and I just wanted to build a lattice work. So what I did with lattice was just typed in the word lattice, and I said write a at hops component wrapper for a simple lattice structure, and that's exactly what I did. So this one's do-si-doing around. Let me turn my turntable off. And you can see that that one's a nice little lattice structure, but more importantly, without going into all the details, let's just start with the first one, which is this point grid. Now, there's many ways to make a simple point grid, but I thought, well, let's write a simple lattice structure. And I wrapped it in that I needed a size, and I set the size to 10 by 10. And I have it over here that I can actually change it. So it's parametric. Ideally, I want it to be a 10, but I can change the size of that. As you can see, it's running differently each time. And then I want to output a list of points, and all it did was use the import math, which it didn't end up using in it, which would be interesting to bring some cosine and sine in here to make it undulate. But the very simple grid pattern of points is just for I in range size to j in range size, and I left it at 0 height. So that was it. And of course, this gets interesting when you start to use trigonometry, but I'm keeping this as a simple script to see if people want to do this type of stuff. Then I simply went over and I said, well, I want to see the lines that are, and you can see this lattice starts at one side, and I think it's turned around here, but that would be ideally, and I have it in isometric mode. I said, just take that data again and output lines. So what it did was it went in and generated those points again without any trigonometry. And you can make this more complicated as you go. You just keep modifying it. And then I put the line curves, the Rhino 3DM line curves through it, and indexed it +1 plus size. So that moved through and made the lines. And then I went in and I said, well, I want to lift it. I want it to have a certain thickness. I want it to kind of grow up and down. And I cheated here because ideally you would have one, and you would be lifting it by 1 unit, and it would simply output without getting into meshes, without getting into breps, all this other stuff and piping, which you can do later in Grasshopper. Probably you want to start stacking this stuff. So I just called it thickness, and the thickness is just a number, and it output it, wrote exactly the basic script again, but gave me this sense of depth of what I wanted to do, which allowed me to take these two areas and with a little bit of parametric control in Grasshopper and a little knowledge of that, you can start to extend your scripts over here. So you do not have to write incredibly complex geometries. In fact, what you could generate, and this is why I was getting in the NumPy and Pandas, is you can generate just numbers, outputs of number grids, outputs of arrays, output of data, and then how does that data drive this geometry? But it's a great way to wrap your head around what it means to be computational, what does it mean to be parametric as you change your models. And you can see there, as I leave it, I've got a very interesting gridded mesh on top of each other. They're not joined, but for visuals, you can see I'm starting to thicken things and get these optical. What I would end up doing there is probably throwing it into a subdivision and seeing how it turns out on top of each other, which it would slow down drastically over here as I get into Grasshopper. But as soon as I have something I like, it may take the panel tool, but you never know. So let's throw our curves in. Let's wait for it. It's got a lot of data to do, and there it goes. It made a nice subdivision on all of those areas, and you've got a really nice, we just take it to bake, you'll see what we have. Take it all to a group, leave this. It's just taking a while to bake all those because there's quite a bit there. And give it 1 second as it thinks through this. But it's a very simple process of using GitHub Copilot to basically come at any geometry you want to do, any project you want to do. Keep a few books available so you can think about bigger classes and writing better script. But it really doesn't matter how kind of clumsy you write the script because it's going to run so fast as you get into here. And there it is. Got a nice little lattice structure that we made, open at each side, no trigonometry, but a really nice form over in Rhino, which was generated by letting Copilot do all the work and understanding that you're bringing out points, curves, and then putting those curves through a system of building a lattice. And that's written pretty simply. It starts at line of the script 715 and it ends in all 3 instances of it, which you don't need all 3 instances. You can see that the final one is really only what I call a mesh, which isn't really a mesh, but I'm thinking of it as a mesh is steel piping. So 781 to 8, so 40 lines of script. That's about 30-40 lines of script in your set, and you've made yourself a pretty interesting thing that you could work parametrically to change and alter what you want to do. If you wanted a thinner mesh, you could bring it down to here, and just remember to while you do that, take it off. We'll run it half, and we'll take our subdivision tool to make it thickening, to make it a geometry that we might end up using. So this is for somebody that knows how to Rhino, is interested in parametric design. It takes a little while to bake here because it's trying to jive up and do everything here, but a really nice sample. What is the time on that? Well, that's per each unit. So there it is as we go through. Let's take it off. And actually, we want to take it off and not select anything. You can see that we have another mesh that's going through. So you can build some really nice geometries in Rhino very quickly with the simple skills of 30 lines of script, very basic for loops, nothing fancy, and just get into it and see what happens. So couple of minute video here. I'm going to turn off the, going to end the recording and pull it over, and then I'm going to pull it over to stream. So I'm trying to do, so I'm going to stop recording.